Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تعتدون. Yesterday we were discussing this verse which I have just recited. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, and hold fast all together. All together can be read all together and all together. This is the second. Jointly. To the rope of Allah, and be not divided. And remember the favor of Allah which He bestowed upon you when you were enemies. And He united your hearts in love, so that by His grace you became as brothers. And you were on the brink of a pit of fire, and He saved you from it. Thus does Allah explain to you His commandments, that you may be guided. I mentioned, among other things, that Hablullah is can be explained in so many ways. The word applies to all those means which connect man to God. So there is the debate that which one is meant and which one is not is in fact irrelevant. Anything which bonds man to God is Hablullah. So there can be priorities. In the terms of generality, I would say dua, prayer, is the commonest of all the meaning of the Hablullah, because dua is available to all mankind, belonging to every religion. Even those who have not heard of Islam, they can also come into contact and communion with God through the prayer. And also the phenomenon of prophethood is universal. So secondly, I understand that prophethood is the rope of Allah, and this here the meaning becomes more intensified as well as more precise, because it is through the prophethood that we understand the best the manners and the conduct which is good in the sight of Allah. So it is a prophethood which makes us fully understand the path which, if we tread, would lead to God. In prayer, there is a wider generality, but there is no preciseness. Precisely to understand how one can reach God can only be attained through prophethood. So as such, prophethood should be understood to be that rope. And here in particular, Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned as the rope of God, to whom we must hold fast. Also it connects with the previous subject being discussed here, because prior to this it was mentioned كيف تكفرون وأنتم تتلى عليكم آيات الله وفيكم رسوله ومن يعتصم بالله فقد هدي إلى صراط مستقيم. how can it be possible for you that you become disbelievers while there is a living prophet among you who is reciting the signs of Allah and the verses from God? Then it is said, وَاتَصِمُوا وَمَنْ يَعْتَصِمْ بِاللَّهِ. Whoever attaches himself with God, attaches himself to God, or comes into contact with God. Etasama, in fact, is stronger than contact. It means who holds fast to God. So the question is, how one can hold fast to God, who is the most ethereal of all ethereal things. God, a God who himself describes himself in the Holy Quran as something whom eyes cannot reach, whom visions cannot reach, whom imaginations cannot reach. It is He who reaches the sights, the vision, the imagination, and so on and so forth. So how could one hold fast to Him? This was the question which was automatically raised. And the answer is already given, in fact, in the form of prophethood. While the prophet is among you, you can hold fast to him, to God. And it is further explained that if you follow the prophet and you hold fast to him, it would be tantamount to holding fast to God. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Nemat is described by many scholars as prophethood, and of course the Holy Quran bears it out very clearly that Nema in its perfect form is prophethood. So to hold fast, for what purpose? Among other things, to create unity among the people who belong to a faith. So the unity of God does not remain in the heaven or in our imagination, it gets translated into real life. This is the purpose of holding fast. So this can be done only through prophethood, never without it. Now there is another statement following this. We have already discussed these questions from various angles. Now I turn to the second part of the verse, which deals with talif qalb, talif qulub, which means فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ فَأَنْقَذَكُم مِّنْهَا. It was God who binded your hearts or bound your hearts together, فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا, and did it in such a wonderful, achieved this purpose so perfectly that not only were you converted into one people, one single people, but your internal relationship exceeded all other human adult relationship, and it was not just friendship which was created among you, it was true real brotherhood. So with the grace of Allah, بِنِعْمَتِهِ, that is through the prophethood which was bestowed upon you, you achieved this noble goal of becoming one people, most closely bonded with the love of brotherhood. وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ, while previously you were on the verge, on the brink of a pit of fire. فَأَنْقَذَكُم مِّنْهَا, and God saved you from falling into it. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. This is how God manifests His signs and makes them clear to you manifestly, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ, so that you may be guided. What is the pit of fire? This has been a subject which is discussed by most commentators. Some commentators have taken this pit of fire to mean the fire which is promised after the day of resurrection, that is in the world life to come. And they say, like for instance Allama Razi has mentioned this, that there are two rewards mentioned. One is spiritual reward and one is worldly reward of holding fast to the rope of Allah. So the first reward, according to him, is worldly, which means allafa baina qulubikum fa asbahtum bi ni'matihi ikhwana, that he created a unity among yourselves in this life. Not worldly reward, but what he means is one belongs to this life and the other reward belongs to the life to come. So in this life the reward is that a scattered people like the nomads of Arab, like the Arab nomads, got cemented very powerfully and strongly together into one brotherhood. And the second reward, which belongs to the other world, is that God, by doing so, saved you from the pit of fire, which is hell. But in fact, the word nar should be understood in its totality, in all the possible connotations which the word has. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Awwal Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu also took the same attitude and mentioned that nar, fire, can be explained as fire of hatred, as fire of war, as so many other fires which consume such people who are disjointed. And in fact, it is that fire which ultimately creates hell. Hell both in this world and also in the life to come. So that was the state of affairs in which Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam found the Arabs. They were fighting with each other sometimes for hundreds of years, for small things. And they knew, if any people knew, the meaning of hatred and meaning of revenge. They would not forget anything. No insult would be pocketed by them. They were an upright people in the right sense as well as in the wrong sense. By uprightness, they understood that an upright people should never forgive any insult hurled at them. So as such, there were many futile and meaningless and atrocious wars between various tribes, as I have explained, starting from very small things and lasting hundreds of years. And these were the people who ultimately became so stone-hearted for the sake of false pride that they buried their daughters alive to save their pride, to save their faces from the shame of being fathers of daughters. Now, I believe, among other reasons, why Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was graced only with daughters should be understood in this background. This was a great honor bestowed on Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the Arabs were taught that, look here, this is what you have been looking as disgrace. God loves him far more than all of you put together and all the human beings put together, yet God has graced him with daughters, and shame on you that you have been feeling shy of being fathers to daughters only. But their hearts had become stones only when there was a false pride to be saved. Otherwise the Arabs had mixed qualities of kindness, of love, of extreme generosity, of sacrifice for the sake of friendship. So this was the doldrum of the people's sentiments mixed with right and wrong, all mixed together. They have gone into a sort of melting pot, from which Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as Nematullah, as God's mercy, saved them. So this is the fire which is being mentioned. So one do not have to wait for until one dies and gets revived to see that fire, which would be a reward for such misbehavior. Because it is a fire out of which one is again put into a new fire, which is created by the fire here on this world. So you must always understand that neither heaven nor hell would be new to the people who deserve hell or heaven. They themselves create their hells and their heavens here. So the meaning of an-nar should be understood in this wider perspective. Again, wars result from mutual misunderstanding, hatred, mistrust, and so on and so forth. And an-nar is described in Arabic as war. So wars would result, strifes would occur, and so on and so forth. There would be turmoil, disorder in the society if the people are disunited. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. That is how God makes manifestly clear His signs to you. Now this is something which is not simply a statement of how God does these things. It is something to be pondered deeper, pondered over more deeply. What has been explained to us? Whenever God says, this is how Allah does this, it doesn't mean that He is exulting at something He has achieved. He is the master of everything. Why should He exult at some statements and this and that? The purpose always, without fail, is to point out that there is more to it than meets the eye. Don't pass over these things. Pause, penetrate, try to find more messages here. So what has been described, it is very important. This is what is said. When God makes His signs manifestly clear, they should become clear to you. And they will not become clear to you if you make a cursory reading and you just glance over what you're reading of the Holy Quran, particularly in those areas where very potent messages are given, such messages as mean life or death to you. Such remarks appear as warnings. Stop, don't consider you have got everything. Ponder over these things further and more, and then you will get the true message, or the true import of the message. So here, it is a message also for the Ahmadiyya community. That is why I am taking longer on this apparently simple verse than you might have considered fit. Because God says, ponder over these things. They are very important things which are being said. God saved us from a very similar pit of fire. Look at the rest of the Muslim world, how divided they are. They have no rope to hold to which can bind them together into one and single entity. Of course, the Holy Quran is there as the rope of God, but how to hold to it, that is the question, to which most people find no answer. holding to it or even attempting very sincerely to hold to it does not create that result which is mentioned here. The result is it would create a jamia, one single indivisible body of people who love each other. Where is that except in Ahmadiyya? Scan the whole world of Islam and you will find that behind apparent facades of unity, even belonging to one sect, the people are divided. They don't care for others, they for their brothers. What is happening in Pakistan, what is happening in Karachi in particular, or in Hyderabad, or in fact every city and every town of Pakistan today, is an example of this pit of fire. There is no guarantee, no safety, no honor, no justice. People relate to me things which do not appear in print in public because they say it has become so common now that no newspaper correspondent would consider it important enough. So they say it happens. Crime has become the order of the day. Daily, hundreds of young boys are either abducted for the sake of money with a real threat on their lives, that if the parents do not somehow meet the demand and pay that much sum, they would be murdered. And if they fail to do so, they are murdered. Nobody hears of them again. It has become so common that the police now had ceased to register such cases as, something common happens. And nobody even cares to go to the police because the punishment for that would be not only the murder of the abducted children, but the murder of the whole family, or burning of one's house, etc. And Ahmadi also suffered from this. And the head of the family is a lady who had to rush back to Pakistan from America when she received the news that her daughter was threatened with dire consequences if she didn't pay heed to the demands of some miscreants, that they would abduct and slaughter her children if they did not pay 500,000 rupees. Now, this was something too far beyond the capacity of that family. So the entire family participated and they had to pay. She spoke to my wife on telephone and said that you would be wondering why we had to pay. Why didn't we go to the police? He said, you don't know what is happening here. He said, in the next house, who is not an Ahmadi house, they did not pay heed to this and all their children were abducted. And there is wailing and crying and a living hell for this family now. And they are trying to meet the demand which has been raised to 15 lakhs now. Instead of 500,000, 1,500,000. So the people, even if they sell all their properties, they cannot meet the demands. This is happening not only by criminals, ordinarily understood as individual criminals, but through mafias, through gangs, which are headed by very powerful people. Some of them may be ministers in some cabinets. Although reports are sent to me daily from different areas of Pakistan, that according to rumors, that and that minister is behind and that powerful person is behind it. But because I have not been able to investigate such things, it is not proper for me to mention any names. But the way it is happening, it is impossible without any solid support from very powerful people. So either they are just powerful mafias which cannot be handled by government, or the government officials or high-ranking officials or ministers are involved. Allah knows best. But this is what is happening. Then add to this the political turmoil, where the political parties are also supporting crime to bring the opposition to their knees. And many such crimes are happening for political purposes, not just for making money. So this is the state of affairs. If this is not hell, what hell is? That is the question. Pakistan has become a living hell. And nobody who knows what's happening there can deny this. This could not have happened if the Holy Quran is true and if they were holding fast to the rope of Allah. And we know that the Holy Quran is true. And we know that they are not holding fast to the rope of Allah. It was, the tie was severed once, and the rope in the form of the slave of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was lowered from the heaven once again. Those who are holding fast to that rope, they have become brothers. This is the point. They have once again demonstrated the truth of God's words by their daily lives, by their sentiments for each other, by their mutual sacrifices, their love for each other, their care for each other. People living spread over 120 countries have transcended the barriers which divide them and have become one people. This is the meaning of the Holy Quran, of this verse. This is why the Holy Quran wants us to ponder further and to realize it's not just an ordinary statement. It is easy to speak of these things, but very difficult to demonstrate them in real life. And the signs are not that somebody is telling people this happens and that happens. The signs are that they have been demonstrated. So in the early life period of Islam, this is the meaning of this verse: there is before you the rope of Allah in the live form of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Whatever is claimed by the Quran, that if you hold fast to the rope of Allah, this will what you will get, this will be what you will get, has been demonstrated amply before your eyes. And you see these signs translated into realities. Now that is what is meant by this verse. God is making manifestly clear His signs, not by emphasizing in vocal terms, but in making them appear into real life. You see, if you read the history of early strifes of Islam, you will be astounded at the quality of love which was created between Muslims and Muslims, believers and believers, in wars, in strife, in ordinary life. When the followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated from Mecca, how they were received in Medina, what love was demonstrated to them. All this is what is being referred to when you read كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. This is how God is demonstrating the truth of His signs in real life, so that you may be guided by seeing Islam or the signs of God in action. وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ. There should be a people from among you. Let me first read the translation as from this one-volume commentary. And let there always be among you a body of men who should invite to goodness and enjoin virtue and forbid evil, and it is they who shall prosper. Now this verse also is to be understood more attentively, because there has been much division among people about what truly it means. And why they are wondering about the true meaning, I'll explain further. In fact, when you find some Muslim scholars debating among themselves the true meaning of a verse or a particular observation, it does not mean that this book is a book of doubts. Dispel this doubt from your minds. When they discuss these things, in fact, all are right. From one angle, they observe something and their observation is true. From another angle, some others observe a thing and their observation is also true. And from a wider topical view, if you see all these things, you're surprised to find that there were different angles of one larger entity. They could not comprehend the whole meaning, so they all put their efforts together, not together but severally. But now in the hindsight, we can see all the efforts not misdirected, but directed only partially towards the truth. So the book is not a book of doubt. It's very rarely that you find a commentator having gone totally wrong. But when he does it under influences which are the influences of age or wrong data which was fed to him. So there he should be pardoned and understood. So when I say there is a debate, it doesn't mean that some people are totally false and the Holy Quran is a book which can mislead people because it's not clear. Only it means that some people reach a partial truth and unnaturally or unfortunately insist that this is the only truth meant. So that attitude is wrong. But the Holy Quran does benefit even them. Like, as I have been quoting the example from Don Quixote, which is in Urdu, we used to read the stories of Don Quixote as Don Quixote. He was a Spanish character who was a pseudo knight, not a true knight, but something someone who considered himself to be a knight, but just a fake thing. And it was said, I like that particular incident very, very much because it's so full of deep meaning. Once he was, trotting along the road when he saw a beautiful shield, like a postmark somewhere, and on one side, the side from which he was observing it, the sheet was beautiful blue. Another knight was coming from the other side. Both paused at the same instant to wonder at the marvel of this beautiful shield. And Don Quixote, or Don Quixote as it is called, observed, what a beautiful blue shield it is. And the other knight said, yes, beautiful, all right, but not blue, it is red. And the tempers rose as the argument progressed, and ultimately they ended up fighting. None took the care, neither of the two took the care of going to the other side and watching it from the other side. It was actually blue on one side and red on the other. So similarly, some commentators have taken this attitude, unfortunately, and they go on and say, no, this is the only meaning, in fact. While in fact both meanings can hold good at the same time. First of all, let me turn to the word maroof, what it means. وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Because this word maroof has been specially caught the attention of various scholars. excuse me, before starting this verse, let me turn to a beautiful commentary of Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ about the previous verse, which was revealed to him by God. So it's a wonderful commentary which you do not find anywhere even remotely mentioned. And Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ has told us that it was directly revealed to him by God one night. So I have not yet finished the first verse, so I'll turn to this new one later on. Now, in one of his Urdu writings, Muhammad writes, रात बहुत बड़ी रात गुजर गई थी कि रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम की एक पेशगोई की तरफ जो तौरात में है और आज तक किसी ने उस पर तवज्जो नहीं की मगर खुदा ने मुझे उसकी तरफ मुतवज्जे किया। बस उसी वक्त मैंने तौरात निकाली और उसको देखा। जो लोग उलूम इलाहिया और उसके इस्तिआरात से दिलचस्पी रखते हैं उनको बेशक इसमें मज़ा आएगा, मगर जो हक़ाइक़ से हिस्सा नहीं रखते वो इस पर हंसी करेंगे। वो पेशगोई इस तरह पर है कि तौरात में लिखा है कि जब हाजरा को और इस्माइल को हज़रत इब्राहीम अलैहिस्सलाम छोड़ आए तो उनके पास एक पानी की मश्क देकर छोड़ आए। जब वो ख़त्म हो गई और हज़रत इस्माइल प्यास की शिद्दत से तड़पने लगे और करीबुल मर्ग हो गए तो हज़रत हाजरा उनकी इस हालत को न देख सकी और कुछ फासले पर जा बैठी। वहाँ लिखा है कि तीर के पट्टे पर उस वक्त हाजरा चिल्लाई और खुदा के फरिश्ते ने उसको पुकारा और कहा कि ए हाजरा मत डर, उठ लड़के को उठा। गरज फिर हाजरा को एक कुआं नज़र आया जहाँ से उसने मश्क भरी। कुरान करीम इन द होली कुरान, I'll translate. अब गौर तलब बात यह है कि फ़रिश्ता ने जो हाजरा को कुआं दिखाया था उसी में एक पेशगोई थी। उस पर मेरे दिल में फ़ौरन यह आयत गुज़री, व कुन्तुम अला शफ़ा हुफ़रतिन मिनन नार फ़अनक़ज़कुम मिन्हा कज़ालिक युबय्यिनुल्लाहु लकुम आयातिही लअल्लकुम तहतदून। इब्राहीम का पानी जब ख़त्म हो चुका तो इस्माइल करीबुल मर्ग हो गया। उस वक्त खुदा ने उससे बचा लिया और एक और कुआं पानी को उसे दिया गया। अरब वाले भी इस्माइल की औलाद होने के सबब से गोया इस्माइल ही थे। जब हदायत और शरीयत का पानी उनमें ख़त्म हो गया और करीबुल मर्ग हो गए तो खुदा ताला ने एक नई शरीयत उन पर नाजिल की और ये इस आयत में इशारा है। गरज़ ये पेशगोई जिसकी तरफ पहले किसी ने तवज्जो नहीं की। आगे फ़िक्रा ख़त्म हो गया। What he means is this is a prophecy which has not caught the eyes of anyone before. The meaning is the general meaning that one night as the night advanced and deepened, my attention was drawn to a prophecy regarding Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Torah, which has never been understood before as a prophecy referring to Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But this was specially done by Allah by drawing my attention to a verse of the Holy Quran, which made me understand the true meaning of that prophecy. He says, I refer to that time when Hagar was so distressful and so extremely in pain at seeing her child suffering from extreme thirst. According to the Bible, Hazrat Muslim says, I got up and immediately turned to that chapter of the Bible where this was described to refresh my memory, and he quotes Bible from then on, that there it is written that Hagar could not tolerate the sight of this suffering child, so she distanced herself from that child and sat at an arrow's throw. Then an angel appeared to her and said, "Go back to your child and lift her up in your lap." And when she returned, she saw a well full of water, and she filled her bucket from that well and fed the child, of course, and so on and so forth. So Hazrat Masih Maud writes that my attention was drawn to this verse, وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ. You were, O people of Arabia particularly, on the brink of a pit of fire. God saved you from that. And the meaning suddenly dawned upon me of that prophecy. He said, when the water which Abraham had left behind dried up and nothing was left, all that was left was a pit of fire of thirst, of emptiness. And that pit was a raging fire of thirst which could ultimately end up in death. So Abraham's water ended and a new water was needed. So God sent some water for Ismail to save his life. This was a symbolic event which was to take place at a distant time in the future history. And to that refers this verse, وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ. When the water of Ismail again got expended and there was nothing left, and when the Arabs returned to that state of thirst and extreme suffering, spiritual suffering, where if they were not saved, they would die. This was the pit of fire in which Rasulullah found him. And the prophecy was that like this water which you physically see, there would be another water which would descend from heaven, which would be revealed to Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa in the form of the Holy Quran. And that water would save these sons of Ismail from utter destruction, and they would be saved from falling into the pit of fire. So this is how Allah teaches the Quran. You see, you can see the difference. No human imagination can reach such things, not even near such things. They are flashes of light from God, which teach the true meaning of the Holy Quran, and that is why the Holy Quran itself describes this process as La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. Only those touch the true meaning who have been purified by God. And this book is also an open book and also a covered book, a concealed book. So the true meaning of the book, of course, requires some sort of piety or purity in your mind, in your thought, so that your mind and your wavelength of your thought are in unison with the wavelength of the Word of God. Then you begin to understand. But that is not all. There are other special flashes of light from God. So then the meanings of the Holy Quran dawn upon people like revelations. So this is one of the instances where this has happened. So now we turn to the verse which I have already recited and translated. I was talking of the word maruf. Irfan, according to Lisanul Arab, is knowledge, but not every knowledge, a knowledge which has got imprinted itself so permanently and indelibly that one can never forget. Aruf, this is why Aruf is a person who never forgets a thing. In Arabic, when somebody is mentioned as Aruf, that would mean somebody who never forgets a thing. And I understand you also don't forget things. So you are Aruf. You see, this young child is the son of an Egyptian Ahmadi lady who got converted to Ahmadiyyat only last year. And he's so young and so intelligent. He keeps sitting and continues to concentrate on what I say. So last week when he met me, I asked him, do you understand? He said, of course I understand English. So, still, you see, and he told his mother that my place is not among ladies. I would go and sit in the main hall among adults, and that is what he's doing now. You're not tired, I hope. You're not tired, I hope. You're enjoying yourself? Good, good. So, after this brief rest, let's turn to the work again. Tarif, to describe anything, definition. Ta'arruf, to look at something intently, with special attention. Al-Maruf has the connotation, various connotations, the visage, good, a good word, favour, generosity, good deeds, maintenance allowance, to deal well with somebody, any act of goodness which satisfies others, submission to the will of God, to seek His nearness. Al-Ma'arif, the beautiful features of a beautiful face, or people who are well known. Al-Urf also means patience. And Arrafa means to apply some scent to someone. You know, if you spray perfume on somebody, that act would be described as Arrafahu. He sprayed somebody with perfume or applied perfume to him. According to Mufradat, in fact, this last meaning which I have just mentioned is the essence of all the meanings, because Urf means essence and perfume and flavor. So, according to Mufradat, all the other meanings draw their connotations from the central fundamental meaning of perfume or scent. Now, what is perfume and scent? This is the very essence of a beautiful thing. So, Irfan, in fact, is not just knowledge, but a knowledge which goes so deep, that which reaches the very essence of the best in the thing which you are contemplating upon. So that is why it is so different from the word knowledge. Arif is somebody who not only learns the Holy Quran, but also goes deeper and learns the true meaning, underlying meaning, and reaches that central meaning, which suddenly becomes, turns into a key for him to open up all the locks involved. So if you reach the meaning deep enough to reach the central point, which can unlock all the meanings of that particular verse or observation, then you have become Arif. So this is the difference between knowledge and irfan. In other terms, this has been referred to as hikmah in the Holy Quran, because when it is said, يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, although the word irfan is not used, the hikmah relates to the irfan in its final analysis. That is, the real deeper meaning of a thing. So that is why other meanings which I have just described are dependent on this. If you see a face clearly, so that the true character of it gets imprinted on your memory, then you will never forget it. If you do not understand those distinctive characters which make that face in reality and make it different from the others, then you will forget it. So that is why these meanings are born out of this central meaning. Moreover, definition cannot be made unless you know the very essence of a thing. If you have any confusion about something and you do not know the very inner nature and character of that thing, you cannot define it. So a definition means somebody has purely, fully understood it, comprehensively and distinctively. He has understood the true meaning in the sense that this cannot confuse him again with any other thing. And when you have reached that amount of knowledge, that depth of knowledge, then you can define a thing, otherwise you cannot. So all the meanings of al-maruf or irfan are related to this central word, and that is why I have been praising al-mufradat so much. Imam Raghib is a very deeply intelligent person. Although he does not speak volumes about things, but he speaks of the very central nature of a thing, which works like a key for you to open up other locks, as I have been saying before. Now there are many debates about who is mentioned to do what. وَلْتُكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ. The word min has been the main focus of attention regarding a debate which has been raging about the true meaning of this verse. Some people believe that when it is said that there should be a party from among you, it should not be understood as a party from among you. That is a wrong translation according to them. Min here is not bazia but bayaniya. There are two types of mins. Possibly a min in Arabic would mean one thing or another. Min can mean to describe a portion thereof. So those who consider this word as describing a portion of the ummah, they call it min bazia. Baz means some. So a min which describes a portion of a larger entity is called a min bazia. And there is min which is descriptive min. It applies to the whole of the subject of discussion, but and does not only speak of one portion thereof, but it is called bayaniya to explain it further. Sometimes a min is added. So they believe this is the min, which is descriptive min, bayaniya min, and not badiya min. Now the meaning would become different. In the first case, the meaning would be وَلْتُكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ, that although all of you are not obliged to do the task which we are going to mention, at least a section from among you, must remain devoted to this task. That is the meaning if you take them in to be Badiya. And the other meaning would be, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ. O you Ummah, you be a Ummah like this. This would be the descriptive mean. That, O Ummah of Islam, God expects you to be a Ummah which has this characteristic. So this would apply to the whole of Ummah. Now both sections have their own arguments to support their viewpoint. And as I have explained already, in fact, there should not be any difference whatsoever. Both meanings are true. As we'll study it further, I can make it very clear to you that both meanings are applicable at one and the same time. But anyway, those who say it is Badiya, they say that it is impossible for all of the Ummah to perform the acts which have been mentioned in the verse, وَلْتُكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. They say there are ladies, there are children who are parts of Ummah, there are diseased people, ill people and disabled people, bedridden and so on and so forth. How can they perform all these things? So it is not applicable to all members of the Ummah. As such, min has to be understood as bayaniya. The others argue that, and they also say that this verse brings to mind another verse which speaks of only a portion of the Ummah doing certain works. वो कहाँ ये वर्ष उसमें है नहीं है फिरक़तुम हाँ वलौला याद है आपको पूरी वर्ष यस वलौला नफरा मिनहुम मिन कुल्ल फिरक़तिन ताइफ़तुम मिनहुम. Why did it not happen that from among every section of your society a smaller section was picked out to understand, to devote themselves for the teaching of the faith and to learn Islam more, learn Islam in a much deeper way than just the ordinary understanding would require, or ordinary people can understand. So that is to say, to specialize in the teachings of the faith and then devote themselves. So these people who call it Badiya, they get support from this verse and want us to understand that it is the same thing said in a different way. The others say no, the entire Ummah is addressed, because the word khair has also been mentioned in another place in the Holy Quran in application to the whole of Ummah, which that verse speaks of kuntum khaira ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar. Here it's not a section of the Ummah which is being mentioned, and everybody is agreed on this. And the same three words are repeated here. Kuntum khaira ummatin. O Ummah of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are the best people ever raised for the sake of mankind. Why you are the best? Number one, ukhrijat lin-nas, because you have been created for the sake of service to the mankind. Lin-nas means for the service of mankind. So if you are service-minded, you have to be the best. Those are the best who serve. This is the first message. And the second, is ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar. You order or you admonish people to do goods, to do good works, and prevent them or prohibit them from doing bad things. So they say this is the same thing which is being mentioned, and because there the whole of Ummah is the subject of address, so here also the whole of Ummah should be. Now, the fact is that both these meanings are true and are applicable, because it is wrong to say that those who are bedridden cannot participate in the things which are mentioned here. Because even the bedridden elders have their watching eyes regarding the behavior of children and even the adults. And they keep telling them not to do this and not to do this, and so on and so forth. They never stop from doing it. Moreover, we have been taught to pray to Allah for whatever we do. And even when the tongues are not involved, even when the lips are not involved, still we can prevent people by praying and wishing. And this meaning is born out of a tradition of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam regarding this very verse. He said, if you can remove evil with your hands by your personal participation in the removal of evil, do it. If not, then do it by admonishing others, using your tongues. If you can't even do that, then disapprove of it in your heart. So even those who disapprove of evil in their heart become participants in this process. So even those patients who cannot even speak a single word, even the dumb and deaf, they can also participate in this. Even children do. We know in the history of Islam there are some children who advised very powerfully and effectively to some of the known leaders in Islam. And children, clever children particularly, are even today known to sometimes catch the follies and mistakes of their parents and tell them immediately, you look here, this is what you have been telling us, why don't you do it yourself, that sort of thing. So even Muslim children are addressed, and of course they can participate fully in this process. Apart from it, a smaller section can also be meant, and this is what applies to those who dedicate their lives for the sake of Islam. This becomes their profession. It doesn't become a side play with them. It becomes their whole, the whole object of their life. They get involved in this task, get close to this task. So as such, if somebody understands it to apply to a section of the society only, he is also right. But both have to be right together, not separately, in disagreement with each other. Allama Shawkani has mentioned that in one of the traditions quoted in Tafsir Fathul Qadir, I think there is no reference made to particular hadith, but it is said generally that once Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ means the practice of, on the teachings of the Holy Quran and practice on practice on the basis of my conduct and my sunnah. There is another very important debate which rages round this verse, is the question of who is entitled to admonish others and who is not entitled to admonish others. Some people say that if you do not practice something, you are not entitled to admonish others. And as such, of course, even if the whole ummah is involved in this, we are not involved in a total participation. We can only admonish others in those things which we practice ourselves. So we will have to be selective as to about what we admonish others. When this was mentioned to Hazrat Hassan, Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, he did not like this meaning. And he rebutted the person by pointing out that if we accept your attitude, that then none in Ummat Muhammadiyah will be in a position to admonish others. Because we are all weak. We cannot attain that model of perfection which is attained by the prophets alone. And as such, after a prophet, nobody can follow him in admonishing others. So this was also true. But we have to analyze this question further, because some people have differed very seriously with others on this issue. The fact, let's first visualize the position in everyday life, then gradually the true meaning will get born to us, will become, will appear, will be clarified. A mother admonishes her children. The father admonishes his children. The elder sisters and elder brothers do the same. Do they always first analyze themselves and censure themselves and find out if they are entitled to admonish or not? Even if a mother is a great liar, she would not like to see her child tell lies. So conviction is something else, and falling short in behavior and model is something else. Falsehood can be understood in this context in two ways. Number one, if you don't believe in something and admonish and teach others that something in which you do not believe, then this is total falsehood. It is not justified from any angle in any situation. But sometimes, out of weakness, although you believe in something, you fall short. Like Ghalib has said, and this also I have been quoting earlier, it's a very, very important verse of Ghalib which says, "Janta hu sawab ta'at o zuhd, par tabiyat idhar nahi aati." Of course, I know full well the meaning of obedience and piety and righteousness, but my heart does not agree with me. That is the problem. What can I do about it? Now, such a man cannot be bracketed with the first man which I have described as a false person, who doesn't believe and doesn't act, but admonishes others. Here is someone who has the truth dawned upon himself, that he cannot act according to something which he desires to act. This falsehood, of course it is a falsehood in a manner of speaking, because there is a duality of claim and character, can be understood to a degree, provided the one who realizes this makes always an effort to improve his quality. Then, in my opinion, he becomes entitled to admonish others. Otherwise, none among us would be entitled to admonish anybody else. So when Hazrat Hassan said this, I believe this is what he had in mind. If you realize your own follies and mistakes and shortcomings, and you are ashamed of them, you know full well they are bad things, and you are at the same time trying to improve yourself, then of course you are entitled to admonish others. But somebody who gets committed and totally sold out to evil, knowing it to be evil, his folly is of a different type, his falsehood is of a different type. Such people, if they admonish others, then they become hypocrites. And this hypocrisy cannot be condoned in Islam. So this should be the correct attitude of Ahmadis, because this is the attitude in every home which is sincere and honest. Mothers and fathers know their weaknesses, but they do not want their weaknesses to live after their death in their children, in their progeny. So, with a heavy heart, they have to admonish, knowing themselves to be weak and even in some ways sinful. So this admonishing, if it is done with this realization that it is not a hypocrisy or showing off of one's goodness, then it is permissible and it's not something to be condemned. Otherwise, it's a very dangerous thing to admonish others on something which you do not practice and which you do not even make a genuine effort to practice. That can lead you to your ultimate annihilation spiritually. Moreover, if we stop admonishing others and forbidding them from doing evil things, then the society deteriorates very rapidly. So, for the sake of the collective life of the community, collective spiritual life of the community, it is very important that we should become admonish-minded. We must speak out, if possible, to point out the wrong of something which somebody is doing. But the way it should be done, this is the most critical thing which has to be further explained to you. Again, there are deviants on this issue. Some people believe, basing their belief on the misinterpretation of a tradition of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that this verse gives license to every Muslim to interfere in each other's affairs and forcibly rectify evils. So anybody who is powerful enough, strong enough to coerce anyone else would do that according to this verse, according to this understanding of some people, and he would be perfectly within his right to do so. He would interfere in somebody else and beat him and say, look here, stop doing this and stop doing that, or do this or do that, otherwise I am going to treat you like this. Such attempts have been also made by governments, like in the government during the days of the late General Zia. It was an effort was made to make people say their prayer forcibly, and in the offices, in schools, in colleges, the lunch break was increased in time. Instead of 1 hour, it would be 1.5 hours, and the other half hour was in fact devoted for the prayer, and it was said that whoever does not say his prayer, he will be punished. I don't know what the punishment was, but a punishment was definitely described in certain cases. Now you know what happened? Instead of people praying in that half hour gradually got absorbed by the lunch hour. And the lunch hour became 1.5 hour lunch hour. And the efforts of the government were completely frustrated. So much so that even in some villages, there was no man to be found who could say prayer, who said his own prayers 5 times. In the whole township, there was no one. And they had to find out, from ordinary public. It was decided that not only the mullahs, but representatives of ordinary public would be found out to make people say their prayers 5 times and to stand guard over them. So things were reported to me, very interesting things, by some Ahmadis, that the representatives of the government came to them and said, you start working as guards. And they said, you don't consider us as Muslims. How can we do it? He said, but you are the only person who says his 5 times prayers. So how can I appoint somebody who doesn't say his prayers? So these things, these attitudes, turn these very important and serious things pertaining life and death into jokes and meaningless exercises. One should take it very seriously. The Holy Quran, when it says that do it, it doesn't mean that you become a superintendent of police or you take the law into your own hands. Not only the law into your own hands, but the decision of what is right and what is wrong into your own hands. When some earlier scholars thought of this, they opened up a new debate on the basis of how this right and wrong will be determined. So those who believed that men has to be considered as bayaniya, as badiya, their hand was strengthened by this new problem. And they said, how can anybody in the world decide what is wrong and what is right because he himself doesn't know? So it has to refer to ulama. And only the ulama or the scholars of Islam know what is right and what is wrong. As such, they have a right to force others to practice Islam as they would say it to be practiced. Now, this again is wrong. It's impossible. Because when the age goes wrong, when things become crooked in a period of history, then it is the ulama who are mainly responsible for that crookedness. And that is the time when people should stand up and admonish each other. So this verse has been totally misunderstood in this respect. And this is an area where it has been misunderstood, I believe. Because if you stick to this meaning, then it would create chaos. In the latter days, when there was to be an overwhelming influence of evil on the society, Hazrat Rasul Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself prophesied that ulama'uhum sharru man tahta adim as-sama'. Their religious leaders and the scholars would be the worst of creatures under the firmament of heaven. So will they admonish others as they believe? So the question of right and wrong according to Sharia is variously understood. And in the wrong days, when the minds of the scholars have become totally crooked, when their thinkings has gone awry, then if you permit them to force their views upon people, then some bizarre things begin to happen, like they are happening in Pakistan. You know, Ahmadis are being beaten up, dragged in the streets, deprived of their freedom, and put behind the bar, and even fines, heavy fines are imposed on them because they have shown the audacity of showing kalima badges on their chests, wearing kalima badges. Now, according to the ulama, this is an insult to Islam. to wear kalima badge for a person whom they consider to be non-Muslim. So if you leave it to the ulama and if the Holy Quran gives them a license to enforce their understanding and interpretation of Islam upon others, upon the society, then this ugliness would result from this. Assalamu alaikum, an Ahmadi says, and he is beaten up in the name of God. And this is the verse and the tradition which is always quoted by the ulama to justify their act. Imagine. Whenever somebody says, Maulana, what are you doing? What nonsense this is? You say, what? Keep to yourself. This is the word of the Holy Quran and the interpretation of that word of God by Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which is guiding my steps in this regard. I am not only entitled, I am obliged to stop evil when I see evil done somewhere. And this is evil, according to me. So when the eyes turn evil, then it is the goodness which would be suppressed in the name of God. And if you give license to people to interfere with other people's lives and affairs, then this is what it would result into. Again, the meaning of the Holy Quran must be supported by other verses of the Holy Quran. Yashuddo baduhu bada is a well accepted principle among the commentators. And no meaning of the Holy Quran is valid which has been, which can be rejected on the strength of another verse, because there is no contradiction in the Holy Quran. Even Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is not given that power by God to forcibly remove evil and rectify the society. Innama anta muzakkir lasta alayhim bimusaitir. O Prophet of God, you are not made responsible to forcibly rectify. Musaitir is the one who is authorized by law to enforce a decision. You are not authorized by me, says God, to forcibly change the society. Innama anta muzakkir. You are only an admonisher. Now this attitude of prophets is universal, because when you study the history of prophethood from the Holy Quran, you will find the same meaning appearing repeatedly with great emphasis. And the prophets of God all acquiring this attitude that it is for us to convey things clearly and understandably. After that, if somebody does wrong, it is his own life he is dealing with, and he would be responsible. So it cannot be understood to apply as the mullahs consider it to be applied. The hadith which they refer to says, as I have already mentioned earlier, that if you see evil, if possibly you can remove it with your hands, do it. If not so, then admonish people not to do, to abstain from doing such things. If not that, at least feel displeased in your heart and disapprove of that. Now this is taken to mean that you are given a full license to interfere with other people's lives. The meaning is not that. The meaning is that if you find something which is not good in the sight of Allah, and you are entitled to remove that evil, it is not you are empowered, you have the power to do so. The meaning there is, if you are entitled to do so, or if the type of evil is such which can be removed by your personal participation, then do not hesitate from doing it. This meaning is borne out fully by another tradition of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which says, Unsur akhaka zaliman or mazluman. Help your brother, whether he is the wrongdoer or perpetrator of a cruelty, or whether he is a recipient of the cruelty. Help him either way. The companions of the Holy Prophet asked him humbly, we can understand the meaning of helping a brother who is being wronged. But how can we help our brother if he is the wrongdoer, if he is perpetrating a crime or cruelty? He said, by stopping him from doing so. So in the street, if a murder is being committed, that is the time for you to interfere, even at the risk of your own life. If a robbery is being committed, if crimes of public nature are being committed where you're not only empowered but entitled to interfere, then you must interfere and remove that evil with your own hands. This instruction of the Holy Prophet ﷺ speaks of such crime and such acts and such situations. It should not be extended to every situation and indiscriminately applicable to every man. So that is why this verse, unfortunately, has been so wrongly understood in this aspect that instead of improving the society, it destroys the quality of man. In fact, this is the verse, this is the meaning of this verse, which has given handle to the same enemy of Islam, which I mentioned earlier, whose name is very. You know, in Punjabi we say very, in Urdu we say bari, bear hai, which means enmity, which is no reason, absolutely. Enmity for the sake of enmity. So this Mr. Very now speaks out on this. Quoting some commentator by the name of Abdul Qadir, he says, look here, you see, this is the true Quran. He, Mr. Abdul Qadir, says that this verse gives license to every Muslim to coerce people to do good, or to beat them up or destroy them as he pleases, or to prevent them from doing evil forcibly, of evil of all sorts, not of a particular nature. He says, look, this is the true spirit of the Quran. Mr. Abdul Qadir has truly understood it, you know. Now, these are the unfortunate scholars who give weapons to the enemies of Islam to be used against them. There is a strange world of paradoxes and contradictions. The Muslims, when they want to destroy their brothers, when they want to fight their brothers, like Iraqis fought with Iranians and Iranians fought with Iraqis, like a section of Afghan people fought with a section of Afghan people, they borrow arms from others. And they generously provide them with those arms. When their enemy wants to attack Islam, they pay back by generously providing them with those weapons which can be used against Islam. This becomes the state of affairs when your sight becomes distorted. When from a straight teaching of the Holy Quran, which comes to straighten your character, you read a wrong, distorted meaning and apply it to your life, so the whole life becomes ugly. So let's pray and hope that Allah would give light to the people of the Holy Quran, those who belong to this book, and give them wisdom enough to understand this book so that it can improve the quality of their life.